JJ the CPA here. For those sole proprietors, self-employed, independent contractors, here's an update and a quick overall for you. So the first thing to know is that if you're filing Schedule C, really none of those categories matter because it all gets reported on Schedule C. If you're an independent contractor, it's you getting a 1099, you received one, and you don't have any expenses. That's why you will just use your 1099s. But if you're taking any expenses, then you would be putting that on Schedule C for all of those. So it doesn't matter if you received cash or 1099s or checks or credit card. What's going to matter with the Schedule C is what's on line 31, which is your net income. Now, for those of you that are true just out doing different things and you have multiple Schedule Cs, then you're just going to take the net of each of those Schedule Cs, add them together, divided by 12, and that'll be your monthly amount. If you're wanting to know how to pull in the health insurance and your retirement benefit, you would go to Schedule 1, which is in your tax return, and if you have it, you'll see Schedule 1, and it is then the self-employment health insurance premiums that you pay. And then if you put money into a SEP, that will count. If you put money in an IRA, it won't because that's not employer paid. And as it relates to then the net income, as we understand it now, it would be after any depreciation or any expenses that you're taking on Schedule C. Get a lot of questions about, am I a sole proprietor if I get a K1 from a partnership? And you're not a sole proprietor, but you would qualify from self-employed if on your individual return, you have a Schedule SE. If you have a Schedule SE, that means that you're paying self-employment taxes. And if you're paying self-employment taxes, that puts you in equal footing with those that get payroll because that self-employment tax is Social Security and Medicare, what the employee would have withheld and the employer matches if it was wages. But if you're getting a K1 from an S Corp or a partnership, first of all, with an S, it will never yield self-employment tax. You'll never have a Schedule SE from a K1 on an S Corp. If you have a K1 in box 4A or 14 have dollar amounts, those are items that are subject to the self-employment tax. And so if you're getting a K1 and it has box 14 and 4 and it says 1065 at the top left, means it's from a partnership, you would turn that in with your Schedule SE to the bank. You would be getting the PPP in your ID number, and then you would be marking yourself as a qualified self-employed individual. And then if you have any other questions about who the owner is, will it be you? If you have a question on, well, how many employees are there? It's just you. Now, if you have a Schedule C and a partnership K1, well, you're just going to add those two together to put on the application. If you have more than one business, but your spouse is one of the owners, well, you're going to do one PPP application. You're going to combine those amounts, and that's just line 31 of each, and you're going to put it in. If one of you is an independent contractor with 1099s, and one of you has a Schedule C, then you're going to take those 1099s, and you're going to add to it the net from line 31. So the thing to know is if it's out at the individual level, you're going to do one PPP application. I'd recommend if you have both spouses that have numbers that are being included, you would probably want to double check with your bank, but I would recommend that you would do whoever's listed first on the tax return as the, in essence, primary person that's putting down on the application. So any other questions related to that, you probably just really want to ask your bank. It'd be better to just answer the questions as you normally would. And a lot of sole proprietors or self-employed, I think you're freezing a little bit because you don't want to do it wrong. You can't. You're going to put the info down. The banks are really good at coming back and saying, hey, we need you to do this. If they say you need an EIN, you tell them, I'm a sole proprietor, I don't have one, you need to do the social. If they say you need a business account, you say, hey, I'm a sole proprietor, self-employed, independent contractor, I don't have to have one, I can't have a business account without an ID number. So guess what, bank, you're gonna need to go ahead and push this through with my Social Security number. I'll put a link in here because if your bank's just gonna say no, then here's a list of vendors or banks from the SBA. So you've got an opportunity there. And then if you're in a situation where you've come up with a Schedule E involved with this, right? Schedule E is not going to count, doesn't have wages, and it's not a self-employment income. So if you're getting 1099s and you don't have a Schedule C, that's a 1099 miscellaneous, that's what you use. If you have a Schedule C, you're going to use line 31 and you're going to add in Schedule 1, line 15 and 16, assuming you have a SEP on the retirement. If you have a Schedule E, it's not going to count for PPP. If you have a Schedule SE, you would want to include that and the K1 that it comes from. Boom. If you're a single member LLC and you're on a Schedule C, you just follow everything that was put into play here. And then we don't know right now, okay? It's the 13th of April. We've been provided no guidance on how do you prove or show as a sole proprietor, single member LLC, independent contractor, etc. How do you show that you used it for the intended purpose? Nobody knows. Not yet. My hunch is that it just is forgiven because it's just in essence based on your net. How would you not just use it all for those things, including for, any rent or utilities, and if you don't have that? So time will tell on that. We don't have any guidelines on it. So what I would say in the meantime is track that money. If you're pulling money out for yourself, I guess you would consider that as quote unquote paying yourself, quote unquote payroll. And then ask the bank. So when you're looking at these things, remember this, it's the bank that you're going to be talking to at the end. That's who you want to start directing your questions to. Does this count? Does that count? Because it'll be the bank that you're in front of at the end, and they need to be the one that's interpreting to you what they are going to count and not count. All right. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'd love it if you subscribe. And then don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me.